Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us on this wonderful Friday evening. We have a very, very special event for you all today. Tonight, we are joined by one of the most prominent political commentators in the digital age. Stephen Bunnell, who many of you all know as Destiny, has built a career as a passionate defender of social democratic and liberal values. He's debated some of the most influential people in politics and media, from Jordan Peterson to Ben Shapiro. He truly is one of a kind. News outlets like New York Times have credited him with de-radicalizing the youth against a lot of the conservative movements that have sparked up across the country, which is extremely important in today's age. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to the one and only Mr. Destiny. Now, a few logistics before I hand it off here. Tonight's topic, the future of American politics. Destiny will kick things off with a 5-minute opening, followed by a 60-minute moderated discussion, and we'll close with 30 minutes of Q&A. So without further ado, Destiny.
Hey, what's up? We're working here? Yeah. Okay. I think we discussed we were going to do about a minute opening. We're going to go back and forth on things. But yeah, broadly speaking, I guess here we're talking today about kind of the state of the internet discourse. It feels kind of strange talking because as an online person, I've been used to being kind of the youngest person in the audience for a long time, for politics, for media, for culture, whatever. And now that I'm in my, we'll say mid-30s, I can see the amount that the landscape has changed in terms of how you guys are now consuming media, especially when it comes to stuff like news or basically anything related to politics. So yeah, I guess we're gonna be having a back and forth on I guess how that landscape has changed, you know, how to engage with it responsibly, what we can do about it. Yeah, kick it off.
Okay, cool. So I guess we'll start with our first question. Our first question is, Oxford Dictionary chose post-truth as its word of the year in 2016, defining it as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Post-truth is often seen as emblematic of the Trump mode of doing politics, but it seems to have pervaded many aspects of politics and political information. Do you think MAGA and Trump specifically are necessary conditions for the continued prevalence of post-truth politics, or do you think it has ingrained itself too deeply in our political environment?
So I feel like post-truth gets thrown around quite a bit. I think I've heard it be thrown around quite a bit over the past couple decades, where people kind of accuse everybody of lying about whatever political positions they have. I think something that's kind of changed a lot recently that has moved us into more of a, I guess you could call it post-truth world more than anything else, is that when people lie or when there are untrue things that are being said, I think that these things can only survive for so long, because at some point they come into conflict with either reality or with a differing point of view where, you know, once those things clash, you either reconcile the reality with the untruth or you reconcile the two different points of view together, which allows you to figure out kind of like who's closer to the truth. I think something that's kind of unique about the current age we live in when it comes to this age being post-truth more than last ages or past ages being post-truth is that we live in this world now where everybody can kind of consume their whole media diet through these handmade, tailored algorithms. And algorithm is kind of like a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot as like a boogeyman for everything. But I think the big issue is right now it's possible that if you like a few things, you get sent down this path where the type of headlines you get and the type of news that you get give you like an entirely different construction of the world than another person. And a lot of these issues that you come into contact with, or a lot of these issues that you see on your media feed are issues that you never actually come into contact with in real life. And then because of your algorithm tailoring the media feed just to kind of like give you the stuff you want to see, it's never critically challenged. So you never actually have a way to push back on or to correct a view that you're starting to get bad information about. So for an example of this, everybody has like really strong feelings about illegal immigration, but nobody really truly knows like how many illegal people are in the country or how many come into the country, right? Like if I were to tell you, I think a really good example of this actually is when Donald Trump was talking about illegal immigration, I believe he used to say it was 10 to 15 million illegal people came in under Biden, and every few months that number for some reason just climbed 5 million higher. I don't know if it was DeLoreans from China, if they were going back into the past and illegally crossing once Trump was president, but like every year, or I'm sorry, every few months it was 5 million higher, such that the last number I heard I think was 30 or 35 million illegals. But if you think about it, based on the media algorithm you're in, you'll get that number fed to you over and over and over again. So if somebody like me comes into contact with you and says, I think the official numbers for like asylum-seeking people who are kind of abusing the system, I've seen anywhere from like 3 to 8 million. But when I say that number, it sounds really wrong, but you don't actually have any context or any idea for what's right or wrong. Like 10 million is a lot of people. You don't know how many actually came across, and you're not seeing any of these media things clash with each other. So, yeah. Do you want to? Do we discuss that, or do you want to just keep going down the questions, or?
Yeah, sure. I'll go in with a follow-up. How integral do you think Trump was to this post-truth style of politics specifically? Like you talk a lot about algorithms making people watch certain headlines, even if they don't. It wouldn't be the best for them being politically informed, but. Yeah, do you think it's more the algorithms? Was it Trump exploiting those algorithms in some way? Or, just the algorithms themselves?
I feel like everything works on a feedback loop in ways that sometimes either side will not give credit to the other side enough for. So, like, I don't think that we're at where we are today in terms of, I would say, the massive amounts of disinformation or misinformation that exists online. I wouldn't blame that solely on Trump. I would say Trump kind of grew up in this environment as a politician, as a political figure. He grew into this environment, but he definitely capitalizes on it and pushes us more in that direction. So there's a world where we have a different president, a different leader who maybe steers us slightly down a different path. We still have to deal with the algorithms and the misinformation, but it wouldn't be quite as bad. But Trump definitely capitalized on it, so I think he pushed us further down this path. But I think they kind of like feed off of each other, yeah.
Okay, I think this segues naturally into our second question. So 20% of Americans got their news from TikTok in 2025, over a 500% increase from 2020. As we know, the media people consumes influences how they vote. With this in mind, how do you think left-wing influencers should leverage burgeoning platforms like TikTok to spread their message and gain political capital?
So this is going to come down dramatically to how you define left-wing. On the internet, this is a very dramatic topic right now because in a global context, when people say leftist, usually they're referring to somebody who's kind of like socialist or in that vein of things. And in the United States, when we say leftist, we still generally mean like Democrat/liberal person. Although in the younger generation, leftist has kind of taken on a little bit more of that hardcore edge of like actually being a socialist or anti-capitalist or sometimes anti-liberal, depending on how far left you go. So, I mean, the advice I would give to these groups of people, it would vary a lot based on who you are. If you're like the hardcore leftist, I would say you shouldn't get any political capital because I wouldn't want you to, obviously. But no, I mean, I think that the most important thing that the left in general, whether you're talking about like center left people or even far left people, has to learn is that at the end of the day, all of these platforms exist, all of the activism, all of the media stuff, all of the tweets and social media and all these platforms, everything, all of these things exist at the end of the day to drive people to vote, to elect the politicians that you like, to enact the policy that you want. And absent that connection to like voting and getting the people that you want elected and the policies that you want passed, everything you do is meaningless. So something that I noticed that the right is very, very good at is the right is very good about always driving people to vote. They're very hell-bent on, you have to support Donald Trump. I don't care what your belief is, what you're doing, you have to vote. You gotta go support Donald Trump. Even though they thought the election in 2020 was rigged, they still went out to vote in 2024. It was so important to them. Whereas I feel like on the left, it feels like, especially the further left you go, there's a lot of kind of discouragement where it's like, oh, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Neither side, is gonna do anything different. Both sides are more or less the same. And I think that's a really misguided perspective because there's a reason why the right, the Save America Act is the thing Trump is leaning on so much at the moment. It's because they know that the power to vote is very important, and when they get the people that they want in office, they can do much worse than if they didn't have those people in office.
Yeah. So just to follow up to that, it seems that the further left you go, the more prevalent what I could call generally purity testing culture is, whereas digression from whatever is seen as like the leftist norm on even so much as a single issue, that raises a candidate to the extent of not being worth voting for, being sold out, being a liberal shill, etc. How do you think left of center people in general can avoid falling into these traps? And what needs to be the rhetoric from left-wing voices in general to get people to vote?
I mean, I really think at the end of the day, it comes down to what your goal is. I think that people sometimes need to revisit you can call it first principles or fundamental values or whatever. Oftentimes in life, you're confronted with decisions that seem to be really difficult. Maybe for a lot of you guys, it was, do I want to stay in my hometown, or do I want to go somewhere else to go to college, or picking majors, or you guys especially have a lot of big decisions in your life right now. When it comes to having a big decision that is throwing up a lot of confusion in front of you, usually it's because there's some fundamental thing that's not quite resolved. So, if you're having a difficult decision between wanting to go to some place to be a doctor or some place to be a musician, the fundamental unresolved thing is probably, what do I want to pursue in life? And then once you have those fundamental things solved more, it's easier to kind of make these choices, these bigger choices down the road, because it all kind of falls into place. I would argue that for the further left people, especially on social media, the goal just is never to get anybody elected. And when your goal is not to get anybody elected, it's very easy to kind of invent other criterion by which you evaluate candidates. It might be their tweet history, it might be their position on Israel-Palestine, it might be how much they condemned Gavin Newsom for saying there shouldn't be trans athletes in the NCAA sports or whatever. It'll be these issues, because at the end of the day, you don't really care as much about voting or getting somebody elected. You care more about whatever social media thing that you're a part of.
Yeah, sure. That seems to be, at least to me, very much so a top-down process, wherein it's larger influencers and social media figures on the further left that kind of expound this sort of political culture. Like, when it comes to internal disputes and sort of soul searching on the left, how do you think you can take steps to resolve that? And people like you, how can you sort of rhetorically capture the rest of the left to make those first principles aligned with voting?
Yeah, I would say it's like everything, top down and bottom up. These things kind of feed into each other. I would say Joe Rogan is a very influential figure. The two examples I always give were Joe Rogan at some point contemplated voting for RFK Jr. for president. I don't know if it was for the primary for president. And the second he said that, his whole fan base revolted against him because it was so important that he supports Donald Trump. And he walked back that decision the next day. And I remember Kyle Rittenhouse also was I don't know, I don't think I'm going to vote for Trump. I need a more libertarian candidate because Trump did the bump stock ban. And in 6 hours, he was tweeting out the most culty, brain broken stuff I've ever seen in my life. He's guys, I talked to my family and I realized how important it is, and Trump, it's existential, blah, blah, blah. So they corralled him back into I have to vote for Trump mentality. So that's a thing that, from the top down, obviously there are political figures and people like Donald Trump or lawmakers, your Mike Johnsons, your Thunes, and then you've got your media figures at the top as well. But then on the bottom up, they're also enforcing a thing as well, right? For Joe Rogan could have said, I'm going to support RFK, and he could have steered the culture a little bit more in that direction, but he's a little bit audience captured, and he decided to go along with where the audience wanted the people as well. All that to say that if a whole bunch of leftist influencers started to tell their audience, we need to pick electable candidates and go out and vote and do stuff, it would move the audiences in that direction. There'd be a bit of friction, but it'd move them there. Or if the audiences, at large, were to say, hey, we think that we need to actually start picking electable candidates, can we do that? Then the content creators would also move in that direction too. But it's kind of like I said, they all kind of feed back into each other.
Yeah, sure. And this sort of discussion of the relationship between social media content creators and their audience sort of moves us into our next question, which is that it seems like the online political culture generally, especially now more than ever, rewards figurehead type people like Hassan Piker on the left and Andrew Tate on the right, who act more so like cult of personality figures rather than legitimate commentators trying to give their views. Do you think the incentive structures of social media companies contribute to political pundits becoming influencers? And do you think that there's an alternative to this dynamic?
So I had a kind of a radical idea on stream that would revolve around the idea that news or politics news or something would be kind of like a protected category of stuff, and that for this protected category of information, you're not allowed to have algorithmically generated feeds for it, because I just think it's so unbelievably cancerous to a person consuming that content. I think the issue is that right now, if I'm running a website, if I'm the head of Facebook, or God forbid, if I'm Elon Musk, the head of X, if I'm running these sites, my goal is to keep you on that site for as long as possible. So if I have the opportunity to show you a headline that might challenge some preconceived notion you have, or I have the opportunity to show you another headline that makes you feel better about the things you believe, and I know that the latter is more likely to keep you on the website than the former, I'm probably just going to continue to show you the latter over and over and over and over and over again. And that type of incentive structure, well, now when you see how it works from the corporate side of things, when you go to the influencer side of things, I know that if I fight against my audience on something, there's going to be friction there that is going to potentially lose me audience members or not get me as highly ranked in whatever the video algorithm is, which disincentivizes me or other creators from doing that. So everybody in this chain of events is kind of incentivized to go along with the whatever the wave is, but it's because of these algorithmically generated news feeds. There's just really no benefit to challenging your side. Unless you actually have some people who are, I want to be a critical thinker or whatever, and we can all like kind of, jerk ourselves off and say that's what we want to do. But at the end of the day, it seems like the mass media consumption for the ordinary person is just, I want to look at stuff that kind of makes me feel good, and that's where we all kind of tend towards,
Yeah, sure. Could you flesh out maybe that notion of what information being a protected category of stuff would look like? Like, how could we implement that practically?
No, not really, no.
Okay.
It would be really complicated.
Yeah,
I don't know
sure,
exactly
sure.
what it would look like, but like this would be an area that I'd be more. There's something called a nirvana fallacy, which is basically, you posit, I think we should change this thing in this way, and then the challenge is, well, here's all these issues that I can find with that, so let's not do it until we figure it out perfectly. And I'm not saying you're doing that, but in my world, I would be okay with getting the answer to that wrong, and then if it's having mistakes and having to come back on it, because I think in our current media landscape, I think it's like right now it's unsustainable. So there are easy categories of stuff like news related to the president, news related to lawmakers, news related to like conflict and combat and departments of government or whatever. I don't know, maybe you could branch it out a little bit more from there. But I think that, I don't know if you guys remember, but a long time ago, back when we used to go on our social media feeds, back when we called it the Facebook, not really, we didn't, but like the news feed was just like, it was chronologically ordered based on what had happened. So if somebody did something at 5 p.m. and then somebody did something at 6 p.m., you would just see that at 5, at 6, like that's how it was all ordered. But now that it's serving you stuff based on what it thinks you want to see, I think that's okay when it comes to watching shorts of The Good Doctor or Game of Thrones on YouTube. I think that's fine. But when it comes to politics, I think that's a deeply corrosive and psychologically damaging thing to be a part of. So whatever category of how you would bucket all the media there, whatever you would figure out as like newsworthy stuff, just don't apply that algorithm to it. And this is one idea of like a million others you could theoretically have, but yeah, I just think it's a really, really bad habit we're in right now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I guess to take it back to the original focus of the question and this idea of like political figurehead types, to what extent do you see yourself as responsible to taking active steps to avoiding falling into this dynamic and ensuring that there's like a healthy sense of disagreement, distance between you and your audience?
Healthy disagreement or?
A healthy sense of distance, just in like the general personal sense, so they're not, entirely attached to every word that you say. There's room for disagreement on certain issues.
Well, I mean, my audience all have horrible media takes, for instance. So my taste in movies and food is exquisite. My audience sucks at that. So I'm lucky there that they fight with me all the time on that. I would say that there are ways to do this. Like I can talk about ways to do this, but at the end of the day, realistically, your audience is going to follow you on a lot of stuff regardless, right? Like if I tomorrow decided to become a hardcore communist or a hardcore Nazi, some percentage of my audience is going to follow me no matter what. Now, I would hope that would be a lower percentage than what would follow some other people who I would argue have a little bit more of a sycophantic audience. But I think that what you're doing is when you're talking through issues with your audience, the goal is you're trying to sell people hopefully on a thought process or a methodology rather than just a conclusion. So generally, I try to work things out from like first principles, like these are my moral values, these are my beliefs, like these are the things that I want to optimize for, these are the policies in front of us, this is what's realistically achievable, this is what I want to do as a result of that. So ideally, like you've given people the tools to disagree with you in a substantive way, so they're not just calling you an idiot or they don't just hate you. And the disagreements are respectable ones where there might be like a different evaluation of a particular fact. So like an example of this might be, I think that any country with sufficient wealth should have like a baseline thing available for its population. In the United States, nobody should be starving, nobody should be dying of lack of medical care, nobody should be homeless. So if you look at a thing like homelessness, so ideally everybody should have some kind of housing thing available to them. And then as a result of that, we had to figure out, well, what's a realistic thing that we can fund to get people in homes? And then when we look at a thing like a topic that we've argued a lot in the past, is like rent control. Personally, I feel like rent control is not a great way to deal with housing issues, so I would be against that policy. But somebody else might see some information where they think that rent control is a good policy, so we have that disagreement there, but we understand that we don't have like a more fundamental disagreement. We just have a disagreement in fact about how we would get to the like a similar place. There's a lot of stuff like that, I guess you can
Yeah, I sort of have a follow-up to that. What percentage of disagreement would you attribute to irresolvable value differences, and what percentage would you attribute to just a difference in understanding of the facts?
Between which groups of people?
Let's just say Republicans and Democrats.
I think the saddest, I think the most irritating thing is I would say it's probably like 90 to 95% agreement. I would say broadly in the West over things. I would say the vast majority of, like fundamentally we would agree on these things. I would say that the vast majority of our disagreements, like 90 to 95%, are differences in information available to us, which is why I focus so much on the media environment. I know that seems a little bit unbelievable. So if we were to take something like a vaccine mandate, for instance, I think that if I were to say that there is a cold and this cold makes us you have a runny nose for 2 days and there's a new one every 3 months, like should we make it mandatory for every person in society to get this vaccine every 3 months or else you're not allowed to like go to university or something? I think most people in the country, Democrats included, would probably say no, we probably don't need to mandate that vaccine. But then on the flip side, if I were to say there's a disease that when you get infected, it's dormant for 2 weeks, and then once it starts showing symptoms like rabies, it's guaranteed to kill you, and it's especially lethal to like children or whatever, with like a 95% fatality rate. I think even conservatives would say like you have to be vaccinated, otherwise I don't even want your kid in the same school as my kid. So I think at the end of the day, a lot of it just comes down to these, unfortunately, these factual disagreements, which sucks because the factual disagreements are really the ones that we should have more agreement on, and then we should be arguing kind of like the values-based disagreements. Like when it comes to vaccine mandates, I think kind of the interesting philosophical argument is how much can you mandate another person put something in their body for the sake of the health of another person? Like there is a legitimate back and forth tension in that. But there's not much legitimate argument to be had if somebody thinks, the vaccine is a bioweapon created in China or is going to turn all of your RNA into alien RNA or something the Jews. It's just not, there's just not like good argumentation, that follows those premises.
Okay, I suppose we can move on to our next question, unless you wanted to do another follow-up. Okay. You've mentioned before that we have a responsibility to improve the social media landscape, perhaps by steelmanning our opponents' arguments, improving conversational norms, and holding responsible bad faith actors. Between Republicans and Democrats, who should bear the burden of making these improvements?
So one thing I've spoken about a lot recently is I really do think that in order for the system to work, both sides have to be willing to play by the same kind of set of norms and standards. I mean, I would argue for the past few decades, it's basically come on Democrats to govern the country. It seems like we are in this cycle where there's a Republican that comes in, everything kind of gets like destroyed by the end of their term, and then Obama has to come in to clean up after the global financial crisis. Biden has to come in to clean up after the horrible COVID mismanagement, and then good luck to our next president. Hopefully it's not Trump again, who has to clean up after whatever mess we're left with, by the end of this term. So it feels like Democrats have been the ones who have had to step up and do it, but I don't think the system works when only one side is really trying. I think that creates for a very cancerous, like a free rider environment where one side is expected to govern and kind of like pick all the pieces up and carry us forward while the other side gets to basically kick and scream and pretend that they're doing the same thing. So I think there's an equal responsibility there. I would want to stress that there are valid disagreements that we can have in this country, like what is the appropriate way to deal with, like asylum seekers or illegal immigrants? Like, should we be more aggressive with border enforcement? Should we allow more asylum seekers or not into the country? Like, there are legitimate disagreements that we can have here that are valuable to have here, but I don't know if it's like, administrative warrants and Article 2 judges with no oversight from the judiciary allowing people to break into people's homes because a brown person who works in construction went inside to, forcibly deport them to another country and they may or may not ever come back even if a court orders it. Like, this is not like a valid line of disagreement. So yeah, unfortunately right now, a lot of the arguments we're having in this country are arguments that I don't think are worth having because the conservatives shouldn't be putting these arguments up in front of us.
Yes, it seems like you're saying part of the responsibility lies with Republicans, but what incentive would you give them to actually make these changes?
I don't know if I can say that without getting banned off YouTube. No, I mean, like everybody, there's a million edgy conservative things I could quote for why politicians should have an incentive to be responsive to the people. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. If you have the answer to that question, what are the incentives you could give to Republican lawmakers or the Republican media to act responsibly? I mean, you would have solved our current huge political dilemma. I mean, the incentives have to be baked into our social media and corporate landscape. Like, it can't be that social media is so heavily incentivized to pay money to people that are telling lies. It can't be that politicians are rewarded so much for just openly going on TV and selling, lies to the American people. I mean, like that's a place you could start, but.
Yeah, Do you think, because those seem to be very external factors, right? Like regulating social media companies in certain ways. Do you have like any sort of idea as to what sort of internal mechanisms or process need to happen within the Republican Party for this responsibility process to begin?
I mean, I've got like ideas for different sectors of society. I don't know if you consider these external or not, but I thought a really cute idea was anytime a public official or a lawmaker is speaking in the capacity as an official or a lawmaker, you're considered under oath. So a person, a cabinet level official, Gnome, if she wants to make a statement to the media, she's considered under oath for the purposes of that statement. So if she lies, she can be called into Congress and maybe indicted under perjury or something. I think like that's the thing you can do. I think we need to be more aggressive about going along with the thing I said earlier about the classification of media as a thing, or politics and news as kind of a separate branch of thing. I kind of think journalists should be a protected title. I think it's pretty amazing that a kid who doesn't know what a managerial office is can go to Minnesota and California and walk around a whole bunch of office spaces wondering why there aren't hospitals built there, and then have these views on X where he's getting hundreds and hundreds of thousands or millions of views because people think he's discovered rampant fraud, referring to the Nick Shirley guy, and that guy can call himself a journalist the same way that like Anderson Cooper can. I think that's crazy to me. But the one of the big challenges for a lot of this stuff, and obviously, you know, you can accuse me of being biased, but I'm just correct. The issue is that if we talk about correcting our current environment, the conservatives are the ones that would need most of the correction, so anything you do is going to come off as heavily partisan. Like, we already went through this kind of one time in 2020 where conservatives are like, why are you guys like regulating us so much when it comes to disinformation and everything on social media? And it's like, well, I mean, like, you guys are the ones that lie about almost everything. Like, what are we supposed to do? You guys are the ones that deny climate change and science and biology and everything else. And it's like, what? I mean, there is no like equal. There's no change I think that you could put forth that wouldn't feel heavily partisan or heavily biased just because of I think where both sides are at the moment.
I think this segues well to our next question. Should social media companies, in addition to leaders and pundits, be held morally, politically, or socially responsible for this administration? If so, how exactly would we hold them responsible?
I think we have to be really careful. So Section 230 is essentially a shield for people that host user-generated content to not be sued for the user-generated content the website hosts. So if I have a website, stephenbunnell.com, and I post on stephenbunnell.com, I think DeSantis is actually 3 feet tall. He could sue me for defamation because he's actually, 4'10" or whatever he is with his boots off. So I think if I have a social media website and a user posts that on stephenfeed.com or whatever, and a user posts this on my website, well, you can't sue me just because somebody else posted it. There's a safe harbor provision for Section 230 that allows me to be safe from lawsuits, basically. This allows those sites to exist in a way where they're kind of protected because the sites themselves aren't publishing the material. I don't know how I feel about that, though, when you have the owners of the sites themselves, and this is a thing that really changed in the past 4 or 5 years, or maybe the past 3 or 4 years, where the owners of the sites themselves are coming out with heavy political leans. Like, we didn't really used to know. Well, conservatives would say everybody's like a secret liberal or Democrat or whatever, but we really didn't know the political views of Mark Zuckerberg that much, or Jack Dorsey or whatever. We didn't really know him that much. They tried to be relatively apolitical, but now you've got Elon Musk out here retweeting so many white nationalist tweets in 2 seconds. Every single day is 1,000 new tweets from this guy. And it's well, do I really view that platform as being an impartial platform when the owner has such a heavy, obvious political slant? Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those topics where whatever regulation you get into is going to be really rough. People are going to feel very strongly about it because it's probably going to damage their side more than the other. But I do think there needs to be a little bit more impartiality or something there. I don't like the current social media environment we have. I think it's really, really, really bad.
Yeah, irrespective of legality, would you say that they're morally responsible? Because I don't think that part of the question was answered.
Are they morally responsible? Yeah, I would say to some extent they are. I think they used to feel that way, and I'm not sure what's driving them now. Nobody actually read the Twitter files, despite how many times the conservatives like to lean into them. But if you read the Twitter files over the banning of the New York Post story, it was actually kind of interesting reading how these guys were debating back and forth on if they should blacklist the story, or if they should unlist it temporarily, or if they should put a warning, because it kind of looked like Russian misinformation, but it might be true, but they didn't want to censor the story completely, but it did kind of violate this hack materials policy. Watching them go back and forth, figuring out what is the right choice here. It seemed like they were trying to do the right thing. But now when you've got, like I was super critical when Mark Zuckerberg, decided to go full whatever with his chain and everything and go on Joe Rogan and all that. And he starts saying, yeah, actually the Biden administration, they came down on us and, they were actually trying to censor us and all this. And it seemed like he was making this heavy, like kind of pro-Trump bend. In one way, I kind of want to attack him heavily for that. But like months before, Trump is literally on Truth Social saying that he wants to I think he was saying he wanted to put Mark Zuckerberg in prison for life or something because of the stuff that showed up on Facebook that was anti-Trump. And when the president of the United States is exerting that much like actual pressure on the CEOs of these companies, I wouldn't expect them to stay impartial, because now you're worried that your stuff's going to be expropriated or that you're going to be thrown into jail if the president doesn't like you, I guess, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So yes, they do have more responsibility. Sure. Yeah. Yep. Also, sure. I guess like the saying too, I always heard about this like "fuck you" money or whatever, but apparently that is not a real thing, because if you still have to go out, on Joe Rogan and cuck out to the president of the United States when you've got like a net worth that rivals that of like some nations, I don't know. Apparently not. You're always beholden to I guess the guy that can arrest you and throw you in jail.
Sure. I guess let's switch scope now from those macro to these massive social media companies, CEOs, et cetera, to just individual voters. And it seems that there's an incentive problem for voters right now. The cost of collecting information about a candidate is much greater than the expected value of the information. Researching a candidate enough to cast an informed vote requires confronting one's biases, challenging prior beliefs, and taking up what's realistically hours of work. But the odds that one individual vote impacts an election approaches zero, and even if it does, the effects are distributed across thousands or even millions of people. As such, it's in many people's interest to collect political information that confirms these biases or grants them membership to an in-group rather than that enables them to cast an informed vote. And off the back of this incentive problem, we wanted to ask if you think the incentive problem explains why so many Trump supporters are able to remain loyal to his administration, despite the administration empirically, verifiably failing to deliver on most of its promises, or do you think there's much more of a confluence of issues there?
I didn't quite catch the last question. To the first part, it's not really possible to do all the research that you can on any particular issue or candidate. Like you could spend months and months studying any particular issue related to econ or geopolitics or whatever else. By the time you've read up enough on it, the issues here had gone and the next issue is in front of you. That used to be what the job of kind of the media or even alternative media was, because you could have a trusted figure that you trust has done the research, and then he'll come out and give his take on things. And if you largely align on kind of fundamental values, then ideally you should kind of largely aligned with the things that that he's kind of like pushing for. Like if there's a guy that I know I trust his evaluation on things and we share similar values, and he says this is why I would support Gavin Newsom, or why I would support AOC or Bernie Sanders or whatever else, you're like, okay, yeah, I largely agree with this guy and I can follow him. I think the issue now is the environment is prone to so much just blatant lying that now the landscape, has changed into what we were talking about earlier, the social media landscape of like, well, who says the things that make me feel good? And I'm just going to listen to that guy, and fact be damned, I'm going to follow the person that gives the takes that I just vibe with the most. And in that environment, it is impossible for an average person to sort through just the sea of misinformation. It's not possible. Like, yeah, you literally can't do it. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
And then the second part, what was it?
Sure. It was about whether you think this incentive problem can explain away why so many of Trump's voters seemingly remain loyal to the administration, despite it empirically verifiably failing to deliver on a lot of the promises that it has made.
Well, I mean, I think, like I said before, for a lot of the things that people are talking about, a lot of these things are things that you can lie to people about, and they don't really know because they don't really have an immediate impact with them in their life. At one point I think it was at the end of Trump's first term, there was a YouGov poll that said that conservatives believed like 20 to 25% of the U.S. population was trans. And it's like, what, you guys are, like, what, like if that's your starting belief, and then Trump comes into office and Trump tells you that he got rid of all the trans people, well, if you look around, there aren't any left, I guess, then you kind of believe that maybe that's true, but it's like there were never that many even to begin with. And so like, or same thing with the illegal immigrant problem, or same thing with Doge. Like, what is $1 trillion? I don't know, what is $1 billion? What is $1 million? What does it mean to save or find savings or cut waste, fraud, or abuse? Like, these are just issues that you never are directly confronted with. So if somebody lies to you about them, you don't even know. And then again, if you've got enough other people telling you like, oh no, trust me, this thing happened, it's kind of like a horrible political version of that. The I think it's ask is how you pronounce it, the ask line test, where you get, 5 participants in an experiment in a room with one person who's unaware of the thing, and all 5 people, lie, and they say that one line is the same as another line on the board, even though they're obviously different sizes. And in a sizable portion of these trials, you can get the other person who's brought in and unaware that the other 5 are messing with him. That one person starts to go along with the other 5, even though he can clearly see that the line's not the same size. But now, like, imagine you can't see clearly that the lines aren't the same size. Like, that's our current media environment, except instead of 5, experiment participants, it's Tim Pool, Jack Posobiec, Piers Morgan, Donald Trump, and Sean Hannity or whatever. I think that in, what was it? Bring me back to the original question there.
Sure. To what extent can we explain the continued loyalty of
Oh,
many
yeah,
Trump
yeah, yeah.
voters to the
Yeah, it would be that.
administration? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and then I remember the one area this doesn't work. I gave the 2 things before. It's for stuff that you never clash because you don't see 2 people debate them, and then you never come into it directly, so you can just ingest whatever information you want to feel good. But where you do clash with it directly, opinion will change fast, and we'll see that with the incoming gas prices. Like, you see people having an immediate response to that because that's not a thing that you can just tell a lie about. People will go to fill their car up, and it'll be $4, $5, $6 a gallon, and that's the thing that you're going to have to reckon with. So, yeah.
Do you have any proposed ways of minimizing this incentive problem so that we can create a healthier social media environment where maybe the incentive to become an informed voter is much greater for most people?
No, you have to change it from the kind of the corporate social media side. I think one of the big issues with humans is we like to give ourselves more credit than we deserve in some environments. So when it comes to processing information, like I say this a lot, like, people think that they are by default kind of these truth-seeking machines rather than these feel-good machines. So if you put a whole bunch of information in front of somebody, they're going to naturally gravitate towards the thing that's true rather than the thing that makes them feel good. And that's, especially for Americans, that's a very built-in part of our culture and society. So the only way to change that is you just really need heavy guardrails on that environment. I think you can kind of look at misinformation and social media as kind of like an addiction. Like, if you have somebody who has an addiction, substance abuse disorder, they go to a clinic. If they come out of that clinic and they go right back to their old environment with all of their friends that are drug users and everything else, they're going to go right back into the drug they were abusing again. People on a diet can't diet successfully if there's a million different snacks and treats in their houses all the time. If they've got friends going out all the time, you can't quit smoking or drinking if you've got friends that you go out with every weekend who smoke and drink. But for some reason, people, when it comes to ingesting good information, they think that they can magically resist the billions and billions of dollars that are being spent to capture their attention on a social media algorithm in order to figure out what's true or what's not true. Yeah. So I think that the whatever incentive is built there, it has to be done. I think, like, legislatively or corporately, you have to change the structure of the social media companies, because I don't think people are ever going to be able to sort that out on their own. I wouldn't expect them to be able to.
Okay, I'm actually going to skip this next question because I feel like it was addressed as a part of an earlier question. So our next question is, in 2025, public trust in the government reached an all-time low, with only 17% of Americans reporting that they trust the government to do the right thing. What percentage of this would you attribute to the current climate surrounding political discourse and the information economy?
I mean, I would again, I would blame conservatives on this, because I feel like conservatives have spent the past 2 or 3 decades attacking all of the institutions in the United States. When you spend all this time tearing down and destroying, they're celebrating the eradication of USAID, they're celebrating the abolition of the Department of Education, they're attacking things that no American should want to attack. I bring this example up a lot. When you attack Ivy League schools as a conservative, that used to be a thing that you did to virtue signal, but then at the end of the day, these guys are all from Yale and Harvard, and they send their kids to Ivy League schools. But now you have an administration that's legitimately attacking our prestigious Ivy League institutions in the United States, things that every single person around the world looks favorably upon. No matter what your view is of the United States, you're not attacking Yale or Harvard or Columbia, abroad. These are just renowned things. But conservatives spent so much time attacking and trying to discredit every single institution in the United States. We can't feel good about anything like anything that we have or anything that we do anymore. One of the great ironies of this, I point out, is arguably one of the only things that Trump did that was a good thing was the Operation Warp Speed at the end of his administration for the first term. But because they spent so much time attacking the public trust in Fauci or just public health and science in general, he couldn't even take credit for the vaccine because most conservatives think that it turns your brain into a magnet or whatever.
Yeah, I guess with that in mind, what steps do you think we can take to rebuild this institutional trust, like especially for social media influencers like yourselves or policymakers, other institutional leaders? What do you think should be done?
Man, I don't know. That's a tough one. I think right now we kind of live in an era of populism where the cool thing is you want to find a guy who's going to attack the system, and it's like you against the system and you against all the corrupt elite and the Epstein class and the billionaires and everything else. And the issue is that when you start from that perspective where you think that everything is kind of horrible and destroyed, it's really hard to give any faith in institutions because your institutions are largely how you got to where you were. And it would be an incredibly politically unpopular thing to tell people like, okay, let's take one step back real quickly because everybody likes to look at everything in the country and say it's all completely horrible and destroyed. It's like, well, the horrible, destroyed country you're talking about, was a leader in education, was a leader in science, is the largest military in the world. We have the strongest economy in the world, one of the most productive economies and labor forces in the world. We lead the world in different technology fields. Like, there are so many things that we had going. It's like, how can you truly believe that every single institution was so horrible and so bad and so, destroyed? Like, something is mismatching here, but it's so popular and so in line with populist thinking to kind of constantly attack the country and attack everything that exists in America today that is really, how do you build, I guess, like faith in institutions when that's your starting perspective. So, that messaging, you're going to come across as basically as a shill if you try to message that way. Like, you can always advocate for change. Like, there are things we can definitely do better. I think that's true, but you don't have to start with everything is horrible and destroyed and terrible in order to say we can improve from the current position that we're at. But it feels like that's kind of where we're at right now. That's the moment that we're in.
Yeah, I guess, how do you manage that balance, though, between, responsibly trying to seek change, trying to move policy forward, and engaging in this, everything is terrible, all of our institutions have failed sort of talk? Because especially online now, a lot of politics seem so short form and decontextualized, and how can you, hold yourself responsible to maintain doing the one without falling into the other?
I mean, it's a problem that you have to hit on multiple levels. I think one, unfortunately, begins at a very early age when it just comes to civics. I don't think we understand kind of how the government or all of our institutions work sometimes. And if you don't have that fundamental understanding as a child, it's kind of easy to take it for granted as you go through life as an adult. You might not have any gratitude for, generally having clean drinking water or food that you can eat without worrying that you're going to die, or, airplanes that generally you could fly on. You don't have to worry about them crashing into the ground. Like, these are things that are powered by so many different, how is it that, I can say a word and there's, a million different switches and routers and everything that can transfer this piece of information from one part of the country to the other, and there's reliable power along the entire way of doing it. There's a lot of different factors at play here that are institutionally powered in order to ensure that all of these things are working. You can give credit to these things for existing, and then you kind of have to build on them. So here's a thing that exists, and it's doing a good job here, but we can do this particular thing better. And as long as you're willing to give some credit to the thing that already exists, and you're trying to build in a direction that will improve the thing that you have, I think that's an easier way to kind of give credit to the institutions that are there, so that people don't take them for granted as much. I think one of the issues is a lot of the rhetoric that we have today when it comes to policy is literally everything is terrible and horrible and needs to be destroyed, and then we need to start over again. And when you start from there, I think it's impossible for anybody to feel like anything in the country is functioning at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I sort of want to bring it back down to earth and ask you, I'm sure most people have had some sort of experience where they have the crazy uncle or some sort of family member who, when you present them with some piece of data or some information from one of these deep-seated institutions, they're going to question it just in virtue of the fact that it's one of these established institutions which are supposedly corrupted. So what conversational strategy would you advise someone to provide in order to convince them off of that point? Or how would you address that in just everyday personal life?
My mom and dad are like 70 years old, and they would rejoin the military if Trump told them to. So I have no answer for you there. I'm sorry. They're like, I can't. I don't know how to debate family members out of stuff like that. It's very, 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 very difficult. Like if I told you right now that I swear to God, like I'm promising you, like all my credibility, like I have at my house a pig that can fly. No matter what I say, you will never believe me. Even if I show you a video of it, you will never, ever, 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 ever believe that. You'll never believe that I have a pig that can fly. No matter, I can show you diagrams and everything else, right? And as silly as that sounds, if you've consumed information on these algorithms for forget a couple days, like a few weeks or months or years, the world that you are in it's an unbelievably different world. Like I would challenge people to, get a VPN and create a new account on Twitter or whatever else, and just like pretend like, oh, like if I was a whatever political person, I would like these tweets, and do that for like 1 or 2 days, and you will be shocked at the different worlds that exist for people based on their social media preferences. Like when I'm arguing with people, there are things that I can tell, like if I say this particular thing, this is gonna be the first time you've ever heard of this piece of information in your entire life. Like you literally, it's like impossible to process. Like I guess for maybe against the left argument, around the BLM time, for instance, right? Like if you asked a lot of people who were super liberal, like how many unarmed black men do you think, or how many unarmed black people do you think are killed by police officers every year? I don't know, hundreds, thousands, or whatever. Like when these numbers are in, it's like 10 or 11 or in the single digits, like it like mind breaks people because their information landscape is so different. Or arguing with conservatives, like there are so many conservatives, I think the majority of them believe that George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. And if you start talking to somebody about like, well, what does a fentanyl overdose even look like? You said he had a lot in his bloodstream. Like, don't people have high tolerances to these drugs? Isn't that part of the problem with opiates? Like, wouldn't you expect there to be more? There is. Like, you can give this information to somebody, but you can kind of tell. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with a friend where you're bringing something up and you can tell they're just like totally zoned out and they don't care at all. Like that's like when you start talking about some of these things to these people, you can tell you've never heard this before. No matter what I say, I can't convince you of this, even if I show you sources. Like I remember my mom and I were arguing because my parents were both in the Air Force and they used to shout at me all the time, if I go into the base, be careful because the MPs don't mess around, and if you drive to a place you're not supposed to go, like they might, you might get shot or something terrible will happen, especially after 9/11 when they started putting up, all these barriers getting into and out of base. And the Ashley Babbitt thing, I'm like, Mom, you guys told me all the time, like, be careful around police or whatever. And she's like, Ashley Babbitt her back was against the wall and they reached through the window and shot her. And I'm like, Mom, you could see on this video right here, she's literally crawling through the window. And she's like, Stevie, that's the New York Times. I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to say to that? I don't know. It's just, but the worlds are just so different. You truly have to experience this. Like when somebody asks, like, I don't understand how a person can believe this thing. It's the equivalent to asking somebody, like, what is it like to do 4 tabs of acid? What is it like to do, 10 grams of psilocybin mushrooms? Like, what is it like to do? Like, you can't really explain it. You really need to experience it. It's absolutely insane. Not the mushrooms and the LSD, I'm sorry, but the other media landscape, yeah.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. How can liberals alter their discourse in response to their failure to stop Trump in the mainstreaming of illiberal ideas in the 2010s to defend against future ideological attacks? There's a lot of different pieces of advice I can give. It really depends on what you're talking about. I guess the 2 big things I would say are we need to do a better job. I really like where AOC and Kadam Mamdani have moved on this. We need to do a better job at understanding that different people around the country are going to have different expectations for their politicians. The type of politician that can win the mayoral race in New York City is not necessarily going to be the type of Democrat that could win a House seat in like a southern state, or the type of Democrat we would want to run in like a purple state. I think it's important to recognize that, for one. We don't need our plus 40 blue districts attacking our congressmen or senators from Michigan, from Pennsylvania, from our 2 blue senators in Georgia. I think that's one thing. I think a second thing, more broadly and culturally, and I think that we can all kind of do personally in our lives, is I feel like when liberals present things, they present things in a very hand-wringing fashion. It's like a burden. Like when we talk about like women voting and diversity and not being racist, it's like these things you have to like tolerate and bear, and if you don't do it, you're a bad person. And I truly believe that the United States has some of the coolest like mixtures of cultures and peoples of anywhere across the planet. And I think that the things that we've accomplished here, I think are in large part due to, as cringe as it sounds to some conservatives, how diverse our population is. We can integrate so many different types of
people into this country. And sometimes when we're talking about some of these things, we make them sound like burdens rather than, I would say, the opportunities that they are. So I think we can do a better job at defending our ideas a little bit more proactively. Like, these are opportunities to do new, cool things, rather than like, these are things you have to do, otherwise you're a horrible, evil person or whatever. Yeah.
And I guess a follow-up to this is, to what extent do liberal societies, governments, even pundits like yourselves, owe the responsibility to take seriously, engage with, and grant institutional access to illiberal ideologies?
What responsibility do we have to grant access to illiberal? Oh, like kind of like responsible platforming stuff?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, like, at the end of the day, people are going to respond predictably to certain things. If you host certain types of content and you show it in a favorable light or a disfavorable light, like, you know that people are going to walk away thinking good or bad things about it. So, I mean, I would argue that as a content creator, like, for whatever the thing is that you care about, like, you have a responsibility that the audience is coming away understanding what you think about it, and that you're trying to convey that particular thing to the audience. So if I think that some particular political ideology is a really bad ideology, and I host or platform a person or watch a video or explore some idea, but I never give any strong pushback or criticism to it, and I just kind of let it present itself in its strongest form, and I leave it completely and totally unchallenged, I think I'm doing a disservice to myself, my own ideology, because I'm hurting my own ideology, and I'm doing a disservice to my audience because now I'm imparting on them ideas that I don't agree with factually or morally.
Okay, I guess we're going to go ahead and move on to our next question. Is there ever a point when Democrats should go scorched earth against the Republican Party, in the same way the Republicans did to Obama, and ride it out until one party breaks? How realistic is this? Would the Democratic Party even be able to do so, given its tendencies toward bridge building, or would they just lose the middle to Republicans?
I think there are ways that you can go pretty hardcore against the Republican Party. I think that the way that I view it right now, the Republicans feel like if they play a game of chicken, the Democrats will always stop. And so they know that if they keep pushing and pushing, the Democrats are never going to do anything to actually hold them accountable for the things that they're doing, and that's why they push so hard on it. I think that, like, when I advocate for Democrats taking a really strong position on things, it's not because I want to see us descend into chaos. I think it's the opposite. It's if you know the other person has the ability to go there, you're less likely to go to that area yourself. Like, when I look at areas where the Republicans show restraint, I think it's usually areas where they're worried there's going to be huge repercussions if they were to go that far. So, like, right now, Trump is leaning really hard on the Senate to get rid of the filibuster, but Republicans know that if that filibuster goes away, there's going to be a deluge of Democratic legislation that's going to come pouring through Congress after that, and there's no way they're going to be able to put a stop to that. Whereas on other things, when it comes to just like lying and misinformation and all this, like, Republicans will lie, all day because they know that they control the media apparatus to get away with it, and they know they're not going to really face any repercussions for any of the crazy things they say or do. So yeah, insofar as, like, I don't know if I would call it necessarily bridge burning, but finding ways, like, maybe we need our own special counsels and our own congressional oversight investigatory committees to constantly dig into the lives of every single Republican in Congress until eventually Jim Jordan or Gomer or any of these, demons decide, like, oh, actually, maybe this isn't the nicest thing to do. Maybe this isn't that much fun, and I actually don't want to be subject to this constantly for my entire political life. Maybe that would kind of make them pump the brakes a little bit more in the future, hopefully, yeah.
Okay.
As a quick follow-up to that, do you think implementing those things would push Republicans to radicalize further?
I don't know, and I don't care. I feel like it's just. This is why I don't like questions like this. I have never in my life heard a Republican ask a question like that. Like, how many Republicans have you ever heard say things like, do you think that if we lie about and defend the murder of Alex Preddy or Renee Good, do you think it's going to radicalize Democrats? Like, they don't even consider this for like 2 seconds. Do you think that if Trump doesn't apologize for posting a video where Michelle and Barack are monkeys, do you think that's going to radicalize Democrats? Do you think that if we say that, like, all black people are criminals, or that Haitians are eating cats or dogs, or that, we need to deport as many people as possible to the CCOT prison that we're paying for, or what if we name it Alligator Alcatraz? Like, is that going to radicalize? Like, they never ever have these conversations and think about this. So, you know what? I think they're doing a really good job at radicalizing themselves. I don't know if anything else that we can do would push them further in that direction, because they're so good at inventing their own problems. Like, I don't even know if they would have room to be radicalized by us, because the caricatures of ourselves that they've built are so prevalent already.
Yeah, and I guess a follow-up to that is, well, what about the middle? What about swing voters? How can Democrats enact these scorched earth policies without losing the middle or looking politically unpopular or looking too radical themselves?
So I think this is a very counterintuitive idea, but I think when you're on the attack all the time, I think it serves as a really good defense for the ideas that you're trying to work towards. I think one of the things that the Republicans have discovered, whether intentionally or by chance, is that when you're always on the attack, this example I give, if you're always on the attack, the worst that you can do is just not succeed in your attack. But when you're always on the defense, the best you can do is to hold your ground, and that's it. And when Republicans are constantly always in attack mode, they never have to defend anything. What was the last thing you ever heard a Republican actually have to defend in their party? Meanwhile, like I'm on Twitter scrambling to find videos of the guy with the dog to prove that Haitians aren't actually eating cats or dogs, or like I'm scrambling to figure out if there really is like a 7'2" trans, girl rapist monster going through the bathrooms, or you're scrambling to try to find out if like, it's just like it's thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. And there's this phenomenon that I like to describe where if you go into a subreddit or you go into a forum or a message board or whatever, and the title of the post is, I really love golden retrievers, and you have a golden retriever, and you want to post a picture of your cute, adorable golden retriever, and you go into that thread, and the only other post there is some guy saying, I own 5 cats, and we go out and we kill dogs. I hate dogs. Cats are so much better than dogs. And you're like, well, I don't think cats are better than dogs. And you sit here and you type up the most factually correct response, and you do your research, and it's actually really good, and other people join the thread. You're like, oh yeah, you own that. The dog killer, cat lover guy. Like, good job. Even in cases like that where it feels like you won, like there's a world where you go into a thread with happy posts of Labrador retrievers and you just post that and you're happy and then you leave. Now you're in this other world where you've had to engage in this like crazy, horrible fight. Although the difference is today that poster, the cat guy, would just be a Russian bot. And now you've like had this fight and you feel horrible for it and you haven't gotten to post anything happy or positive. And just that constant world of always being on the defense just makes it impossible for us to carve out any space for ourselves. So all that to say that like, the question was like, how do you win over the moderates? Like, I think we always envision like the perfect defense as the way to win the moderates over and to not be too aggressive. But imagine somebody comes out and says something as crazy as every single person that traded Trump coin should go to prison. That's not a crime. There's probably no, as crazy and corrupt as it is, there's probably no illegal activity there. But imagine a world where Republicans have to come out and say, okay, well, hold on. I don't think there was anything illegal, even though we were making billions of dollars off of this. Like, even their defense there kind of makes them look bad, So I think having a more aggressive Democratic posture where we're trying to take the fight to them more, I think actually helps to encourage people who are, one, on the center left, because we're already kind of discouraged on our own side, but then two, moderates or independents that kind of see that like, oh, there are issues with the Republican Party, because those issues are like never, ever, ever spoken about.
I guess, how do you think things ended up this way with liberals always needing to be on the defense, but Republicans needing to be more, or Republicans usually being more unapologetic of their words and actions?
I mean, I'm sure there are theses and theses written on. There's so much that you can go into for that. If I just had to guess, like, the feeling is that I think Republicans have just made this a deliberate part of their strategy for a long time. You've got actors like Roger Stone, you've got people like Steve Bannon, you've got just like this deliberate media apparatus that is constantly trying to effect like a certain outcome, and that kind of deliberate push in that direction kind of explains where we got to today. Like I don't know if, man, the ages. I don't know if you guys remember the whole Bernie Sanders, Donna Brazile, Hillary Clinton thing in the 2016 primaries. There was a big deal where I think the Hillary Clinton campaign was given a question from Donna Brazile in advance, one question about something, and it was like a huge scandal, and like everybody on the left was reporting on it. It was a big deal. And then meanwhile on the right, like you've got like whole media empires, Fox News, Murdoch, and everybody else who are complicit in helping to amplify these blatant lies from the Trump campaign about election fraud. And it's just absolutely insane, like the difference in standards there. But I don't think it's an accident. I think it was like a deliberate strategy by the Republican Party to never be always be unapologetic, never be on the defense, always attack, always pivot, never respond to a question, even if you've got to go out and say the most ridiculous things ever. Just do it and know that the media cycle will be over in 2 days and you can move on to the next talking point in 48 hours. Yeah.
You can finish your point. Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay. So I wanted to return to a point that you made about there being sort of these entire cultural apparatus, or these entire media apparatuses devoted towards always letting Republicans be on the attack. And it relates to a conversation you had on stream a couple of weeks ago about the left's, by this I mean Democrats, inability to create these parallel sorts of institutions. So just even things like Fox News, right? Like there's no even remote parallel to that on the left. Do you think this is like always going to be a limiting factor for Democrats to engage in the sort of like top-down cultural domination that Republicans can do? Or do you think there are more like bottom-up approaches that like even smaller figures like yourself, sorry, not to, it's very.
Was that a height joke, or was that a joke about my audience? No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I think it's possible. You can do it from the top and bottom. You can do it from the bottom, things like creating think tanks and foundations that give talking points or ideas to Democratic politicians. From the top, it might be being more supportive of these other institutions. You know, like one of the big criticisms of the Democratic Party is they never really build any infrastructure or leave anything behind or work with their kind of media apparatus much. Meanwhile, every freaking person on the right, it seems like they're constantly on the phone with Donald Trump, like every 2 days, like having a conversation with him. Oh, I talked to Trump yesterday, blah, blah, blah. And the level of coordination and collaboration there between, you know, like all these people who are cabinet level officials who are so excited to run onto all these podcasts or Fox News is just unprecedented. It's crazy how much effort they put into that. So I think it's possible on the left. One thing I think that the left, I guess, can have a little bit of credit for is I think in a way the left did kind of win. At least at one point, they won a lot of the culture war stuff. So things that the left were actively fighting for, we kind of became so dominant in the narrative on it that those fights kind of receded into the background. And then the left, it feels like they became just kind of like a de facto part of American culture. And then, so it's harder to see that you've won those fights. And then as a result of like not replacing your old fights with new ones, it just kind of like becomes American culture. And then the right is still working on their stuff. So I think to some extent, maybe the liberals became a little bit of a victim of their own success. I think you're definitely going to see that kind of thing happening with MAGA, especially after these midterms as they start to fall apart because they were so dominant for so long. Yeah.
Okay. We're about at the end of our time here for the moderated discussion. So I just kind of wanted to end you off with a general sort of softball question. What would you recommend that students on campus do at the University of Florida and across the country to get politically involved and make political changes in their communities?
To get politically involved and make political changes, I mean, like the first thing I would say is like don't ever engage with politics like at your own psychological detriment. Like some people legitimately are miserable engaging in politics online. I'm sure all of you know at least one person in your life who seems to be genuinely made miserable by engaging with politics. You know, like don't do that. Like you can't change the entire world, but you know, like you have your own world that you can have a great influence on. And you never want to be like a bad representative for your political ideology, and you don't want to be engaging in politics to the detriment of your own health, because if you were to substantially engage with politics in some way in the future, it's going to hurt your ability to do so because all of it is associated with so much misery and it's been such a detriment to yourself. It's always better to get involved at the local level. There's just more power available there if you are willing to go to city council meetings, if you're willing to participate in, you know, like student bodies and everything else. You know, where you have these, you create chapters and invite people on to speak and everything. So, I mean, at the local level, there's always a lot of stuff there. I would say that my general piece of advice for students, though, is, like, I know it feels lame and cringe and horrible, but, like, at this point in your life, I can't believe I'm going to say this, is so cringe. Like, the biggest investment you can make is your education. Like, you really should, like, go to class, participate in all of do your extracurricular, or you don't call it whatever, sports or whatever clubs or frats or anything else. Like, especially if you're going to a whole university like this campus is huge. Like, you don't want to be a person who just goes to class and then goes home and doesn't participate in anything else on campus life. Like, this is the last time in your life that you have the ability to openly explore so many other things before you put on the chastity cage that is work full time for the rest of your life. Like, you don't want to get trapped in that and then not be able to explore the things you could explore here. So yeah, make sure that your engagement with politics is happy and healthy, and that you feel good engaging with it. And if you want to do something politically to get politically effective, like the local level is always where the most power is kind of available for you if you want to grab at it. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, this concludes the moderated discussion portion of our discussion today. So how about let's all give a big hand for Destiny. We're gonna take a brief intermission now, so we're gonna give it about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna kick back up with our Q&A section.
Hello. Okay, with the average American spending nearly double on healthcare as other major OECD nations, and with 27 million Americans without health insurance, like, what's your plan to fix it? Do you have any ideas on like if employer-provided healthcare is like a bad thing overall for our country, and how would you actually go about ending that? And do you have like an idea for like a public option versus Medicare for all type solution?
I don't have a solution for healthcare right now. Personally, I mean, like I'm kind of a fan of the public option stuff, like maybe expanded Medicare stuff as well. I think the big issue with healthcare is the conversation around healthcare is very challenging to have because a lot of people just have a lot of dumb ideas about things related to healthcare. It's going to kind of go with the thing I was talking about earlier, where there are good conversations to be had and there are dumb conversations to be had. Like, I think a good conversation is like, what is a baseline level of medical care that every U.S. citizen should be entitled to, and then what should we work towards to like make that like an achievable reality? Like whether that means there's some massive subsidies for it, or there's some baseline like Medicare that's provided to every citizen. Like, those are good conversations to have. Unfortunately, I see a lot of dumb conversations over and over again. People on the right will say that, you know, like, you don't deserve any health care, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to literally let somebody die in the street because they can't afford an ambulance ride. Like, this is obviously silly. But then people on the left will say things like, oh, insulin was made patent-free, you know, like 100 years ago. Like, we should all have free insulin. And it's like, you can have that insulin. It sucks shit. Nobody uses it anymore for a reason. So, it's just a matter of figuring out, like, what is the level of healthcare that we want Americans to have access to, and then kind of, like, making progress towards changing it. Like, I think the ACA was a step in the right direction. We got more people insured than, like, I think it was like 13 or 14 more million people got insurance, and there were some big changes we made. Like, before, if you had a pre-existing condition, you couldn't get new health care, and you know, that was a really bad situation. But the moving in a stronger direction is, we're just so not ready for that conversation right now because we're so mired down in so many other dumb things. But yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Cool.
Hey, my name is Holden.
Hi.
I go to Florida State University. I'm studying political science and statistics. I'm working with a professor and some other classmates on research on effective polarization. Do you know the term? Do you understand?
Effective polarization.
Effective polarization. So basically what it is how much two people from different political parties like personally hate each other.
Okay, sorry.
And well, so this is a research topic, and in the literature, a lot of people are saying that, you know, working with people having in-person conversations or seeing like civil discourse on social media helps like reduce that. And I think it's generally agreed upon that it's a good thing to reduce. I guess in your experience, have you seen any like methods or anything, any comments on like what would be a good way to kind of reduce hate between people of different opposing political parties?
I mean, it was kind of the thing I was saying before, in that you need to have different people coming together and having conversations. Right now, it's very easy to create a caricature of the other side and then to only engage with that. So, like, if you're feeling as the average person on the right is just an evil, hateful person that wants to destroy this country just because they're so racist and terrible, like, you're just not going to get very far in conversations with these people. And then for them looking at the left, if they think that, like, every person on the left is just an evil communist that wants to rob the wealth from everybody working because they're all lazy freeloaders, like, that person's not going to have a good conversation. But the problem is, if I'm on a political side and I engage with somebody who's opposite me, whatever conversation I have with them, it's not going to be as fun or as entertaining or as satisfying as if I create a caricature of that person and then platform that thing instead and then attack that thing over and over again. Like, conversations related to healthcare and children and trans people these are challenging conversations to be had, but it's like so much more epic if I just show some lady who wants to make her 4-year-old trans and then just bash this person all day, and then I can get like sick ratings and views for that. So you don't really ever have, you know, it's just, it goes into that media cycle of like, why have the critical conversation if bullying caricatures just gets you better views and more money?
So you're saying it's just like a lot easier to just like bash on each other online rather than just actually having a good conversation?
Yeah, or to fight the caricatures and straw men, yeah.
Okay. All right,
Unfortunately,
well,
Thank you.
Hello. So earlier you guys were speaking about how the right is able to unify their messaging so well with like such vertical integration from the White House to just a typical voter. And you guys were talking about how to logistically get to that point. Let's say the left is able to do that, emulate it. What message would you want the left to be pushing? And how do you kind of stray from peripheral topics like trans athletes and stuff like that?
I mean, I think whatever message you push, you just have to be kind of in alignment on it. And I think maybe just because, unfortunately, the media environment we live in today, visibility might be just as important as the things you're actually doing. Again, like we might have a lot of lessons to learn maybe with how Mamdani is now, running his office as mayor. Like I don't really know much about what's going on in New York, but I did see like there are pictures of him and videos of him holding up like, in 1 week we just sealed like 20,000 potholes or whatever else. Like maybe we need that type of thing to be said, like here's an accomplishment the United States has done today, here's something that we were able to achieve in medicine, FDA, or whatever else. I don't know, but however you message, it's got to be a way where there's visibility, and we all have to be like on the same page about celebrating at least some of our accomplishments.
So outside of like how you message, are there any specific messages like you think that strategically Democrats should focus on? I guess whether to try to capture those like middle voters type of people.
Man, I guess it would depend, I guess, on what. It would depend, I guess, on. I'm trying to think of where the election is going to be. The problem is, like, conservatives control both sides of everything so well right now. I don't even know what the average voter cares about. Like, this sounds like very dismissive, and I don't mean to make it sound this way, but like, I just don't believe that like the average conservative like cares anywhere near as much about trans issues or illegal immigration as they actually do. Because I noticed that they stopped talking about it, like certain things, almost immediately. Like, I was under the impression that drag queens were destroying all of our children at libraries all across the nation every single day. And then as soon as Trump comes into office, I don't know if he killed all the drag queens or if they stopped it everywhere, because I don't hear about that at all anymore. Or when Trump comes in, he says over and over again, there's 30 million illegals. Like, okay, well, where do they all go? Like, I don't hear you guys talk at all really about like the illegal immigration thing. 30 million illegal people, that's a lot of people. So if the problem wasn't as, like, I feel like Republicans are so good at like creating these problems and then raising them to this level of salience that is not actually there. So when you ask me like, how do we message back? But like, if I were to come into office and say, hey, there were never really that many illegal immigrants, like people immediately want to fight you on that, because conservatives they're just so good at like establishing these truths that you just can't question. Like when it comes to like government stuff, right? Like, is there a lot of waste and fraud in the government? Like, that's just, you have to accept that as a yes. But it's like, is there? I don't know. I mean, Doge had free reign on the entire government, and they apparently found literally nothing. Like, so I mean, that's a pretty big deal, So where is all the waste and the fraud and the abuse if the only thing you guys could cut were actual programs like USAID or getting rid of the Department of Education? I guess whatever positive program we build, because I mean, the first thing we're going to have to do is we have to pick up the pieces from wherever this administration leaves us in a few years. After we've picked up the pieces from that, we just have to find the big policy areas that we want to hit on. Assuming the landscape is similar, it's probably going to be something related to like affordability and the value of education and everything that goes into that. So something to do with housing and,
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, Stephen. Good evening to our handsome host. I wanted to ask in regards to, we look at the symptomatic issues that we talk about. I think a lot of our like-minded opinions agree on what is happening. We dance around the topic of what we do about it and the form in which we talk about it. You don't like to give a straight answer. I think that you don't really have a good answer, which you are honest about. I think that the forum in which we talk about these things need to be on a state level. I think we alluded to that. Now we talked about the local institutions, our education system, the importance of that. To the extent that the federal government has been eroded, what do you think the role of the states are? And you think how Texas is so important, how California is so important, how the Florida identity is so important, and to what our founders had, a state identity. To what extent do you think we need to go from the bottom up, and like how RFK flipped the food pyramid, we need to regain that foundation of state identity in federal politics?
I don't know. That's kind of a scary concept to me. I think having the national identity, I think, has been a huge boon to the United States' presence in the world over the past 100 years. I think the European Union, I think, was trying to emulate that idea of the amount of integration you have, among the states in the United States. Like, generally, all of us view ourselves as Americans first, unless you're from Texas or from New York City. These people are a little bit more obsessed with where they come from. But generally speaking, like, we all view ourselves as Americans first. So I don't know how I feel about, like I think there are, in some ways, I think there are places where we could push more on state identity. I think when it comes to policy, I feel like there are things that would be cool to try out on state levels before trying to bring it to the national level. So single-payer healthcare or public option or whatever, totally, open market healthcare, these are issues that are debated a lot. I never really see people arguing as much to make it so that a state tries an experiment with this first. It would be interesting to see like a UBI state or a single-payer state or, a state with a public option. I think that, I know there's like Medi-Cal and some states are kind of working with this, but like not as much as it could be. So in terms of like state identity, I guess stuff like that might be interesting. You said I don't really talk about any solid ideas. I mean, like I have some that can be debated, but it's often it's kind of in a whole other world. But like one thing that I feel strongly about is after the Civil War, we got the 14th Amendment. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment basically forbids people who have taken an oath from engaging or aiding in rebellion or insurrection and then taking another oath. That was a part of the 14th Amendment. And then for reasons that are known only to God, the Supreme Court decided that Section 3 didn't really apply anymore unless Congress passed a law for it. I think that when the next Congress comes in, I think they should pass a law enforcing Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that forbids every single person that was complicit in the January 6th stuff from ever taking another oath or holding another office. That would be one like solid idea that I think could be campaigned or pushed on, but obviously that's a pretty radical thing that...
Well, I mean, do you not see how you're still appealing to the concept of Congress acting? We have faith in the mind that the future Congress is going to act on these things. I think we've already demonstrated that they have no willingness to, and we have these magical figures who are going to arrive in a couple years who are allegedly going to do this. I think that this is the role of the states that need to intervene when Congress has been eroded, when the the presidency has been eroded, when the Supreme Court has been eroded. You need a strong state identity. I mean, we used to be a nation of unity. We are a union, but every day we see that we are less a union and more of an empire. And how we combat that, we need to look back at what these conservatives used to love and praise states' rights, the 10th Amendment. We revoked the Senate away from being into a popular vote by the people. What do you see that the states need to unify and ultimately revoke the consent of the governed from the federal government in that sense so that these rules can be abided by?
Yeah, I mean, that's a perspective. It's just one I totally disagree with.
I mean, is the worry like balkanization? What do you worry that the states are going to run away with?
I think the more unification you have, the larger the body that you can represent in politic, and then the more force that you can project, economically, militarily across the world. Like, ideally, you don't want a country turned in on itself. You want to have like a strong unified front that you can approach the rest of the world with. So in that sense, having like a very strong federal identity as the country of the United States of America, I think is more important than having these more disjointed states, in my opinion.
So do you feel the founders were wrong in that sense, that that's what they founded a lot of our ideas upon, a state identity, building a union?
Well, I think the founders aren't perfect, but the founders created the Constitution to evolve and change over time, and the founders also created the Constitution when there were way fewer federal laws, and when the country itself was, there was just a lot less stuff going on around the world. Like the idea that we would have to present like this strong unified front in so many different sectors maybe wasn't quite as salient an issue. But I mean, like the founders did foresee a divided country. One of the reasons why we moved from the Articles of Confederation to having the Constitutional Congress was the fear of other countries coming in and kind of like turning states against other states. So I think the idea of having a strong federal government was important back then. But I mean, like if you read the Federalist Papers, the founders also believed that the pardon power should be absolute and given to the president because there's no world where he would make stupid pardons because it would look so bad and embarrassing, and we see where that turned out. So I mean, yeah.
Well, of course, it was a pleasure to have you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Hello, my name is Matthew, and it is projected that the average age that Gen Z will be able to afford, will be a homeowner, will be roughly in their 40s. I was wondering what policies can Democrats implement to effectively address the affordable housing crisis, while also reducing the overall cost of living for Americans?
Listen, someday the baby boomers are going to be gone and all those houses are going to come back on the market. Housing is difficult because the honest conversation about housing is you have two forces that are pushing against each other, and nobody wants to talk about this other one, which is that the majority of Americans live in homes that are owned by a person in the home, and that if you want to make housing more affordable for most people, it's going to hurt the people that own the homes. And that's the reason why nobody talks about that. So everybody nationally will talk about like a homeowner crisis, but the reason why there are so many NIMBYs and people that don't want expanded homes or high-rise apartments near their properties because that's necessarily going to lower their property values. I'm a big fan of a more totalitarian approach of like the federal government or the state government comes in and says we have to build more housing, and sorry, like that's just how it's going to go. But like it would be an incredibly unpopular thing for the people that already have the homes. I don't know what the numbers like this look like, but I'm hoping that once, because we still have kind of a top-heavy population, that once the boomers are gone, that a lot of those homes are hopefully freed up because they do occupy a lot. Like when you see like the average age of a home buyer, I think is like 47 or something today. That's not the average age of a first-time home buyer. That's because people are buying their second or third home who are already advanced in age, and they're like they push that age up more and more and more. So, but housing is like a really hard one. Like everybody around the world is having issues trying to expand housing. Like it's an issue, in Europe a lot as well too, in every place in the world. But I think it has to be like a pretty strict like government approach of like we're just going to zone for more housing. But I don't know how you do that because the voters that own the homes, who are your strongest voting base, generally don't want that. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you think that there should be more stricter regulations from corporations buying housing?
It's an and nobody likes when I say this, but I just don't think it's a big problem. I think that market solutions for homes work pretty well. Like if you zone for houses, like they'll be built. There's this idea that like BlackRock or whatever, or Blackstone is, I forget which org it is, that are coming in and they're like buying up all the homes, and that's what's driving up the prices. But the reality is, if you look at the percentage of homes that are being bought by these types of companies, it's not very high. It's there's like one market I think where they have a disproportionately high impact. I think it's the Atlanta market in Georgia. But aside from that, it's a simple physics problem. There's like you're trying to cram a bunch of people into an area where you just don't have the housing units available, and nobody wants to make those housing units available because the people that live there, who are your strong voters, don't want to vote for it. Like if you think about the people that are hurt by high housing costs or unaffordable housing the most, they're people that are never even going to be there because they can't afford to move there. So like the people that would vote otherwise aren't even showing up in those places because they can't even afford to move in there. So you have to have a very heavy-handed approach for it, which is, nobody's done it yet, I guess, in the United States. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
How's it going, Steven?
Hi, what's up?
Hear me all right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, so my girlfriend's brother is actually a fan of yours.
Okay,
And
cool.
a few months ago, he was on your stream, and I think he unfortunately got cut off before he got an answer. So I was wondering, do you play any board games?
No, I don't play any board games.
All right. Besides that, do you have any plans to maybe debate Hassan Piker anytime soon?
Anytime he wants to. I'll debate any large media figure, but like I said before, you're generally better off just kind of pigeonholing yourself into your own world and not confronting a lot of, having critical conversations. There's no point for it, yeah. But I mean, of course I would be in favor of it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, love your stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jonathan, and I'm Iranian, so I wanted to ask about what's going on there. Do you think the Trump administration was justified in entering the conflict with Iran? And now that we've inflicted so much damage, do you think we should escalate with troops on the ground and finish the job by attempting to enact a regime change?
I think there was an argument to be made for the first strike. Was it like a year ago or however many months ago? Because I think that an Iranian nuclear weapon would be a very scary thing. I have no love for the Ayatollah. I'm not going to defend that regime, but the problem is that right now, I don't think Trump has a plan for the Middle East. I don't think he has any vision for the region. I think it's kind of just whatever Netanyahu tells him to do, he's kind of willing to jump on board with because he thinks he can get big wins or whatever. And we can already see right now that this current military excursion just didn't have, the planning was just not there. The idea that he seemed shocked that Iran was fighting back when he put them into an existential war is just beyond stupid to me. So I mean, you can have I guess you can have a good war for the wrong reasons with the wrong people. So I guess that's maybe how I would describe the current war. I guess it's just hard to have an opinion with this current regime that's just so completely out of its mind. Yeah.
I agree. Thank you.
Hello, Stephen.
Hi, what's up?
My name is Eli. I'm a viewer of yours, and I had a question regarding, I guess, stagnation. I think we've noticed a lot of stagnation in a lot of aspects in our country and in our lives, where we see the stagnation of wages. We've seen the stagnation of our policies being pushed through. It's taking longer and longer for our government to get anything done. And I feel like the only conclusion that I've come to is that they're all bought out. Any company or any large organization has been built up over the past 100 years to have a foothold in any politician's pocket. And goodness, I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little lost here. But I guess the question I wanted to ask was, do you think the problem is our bureaucracy? Would it help for us to raise the amount of representatives we have in Congress? adding third parties to oversee things like redistricting, or adding laws to prevent congressmen or lawmakers from lying. You know, I forget which country it was. Was it Canada or some European country? They had made it illegal for any lawmaker to say a lie that was like verifiably wrong, and they would be punished by being kicked out of Congress. You know, would you support, I guess, movements like that to rid out money and corruption from politics? It's very broad. I assume you would agree with most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are good conversations that can be had. I think one of the issues that people need to look at is sometimes you have sometimes you have an institution that's dysfunctional, but the dysfunction could either be the institution itself, or the institution could be representing dysfunction. And I think sometimes people have an issue separating these two things. If you've watched my stream for a while, so you know there's we're famous for messing with our audio a lot for my microphone settings and everything. Okay, this is a meme on our stream. Right. And one thing I learned when it came to like kind of, I don't know if you call it like signal processing or whatever for videos or microphones, is like sometimes I'll be sitting in a room and I'm messing with a condenser microphone and there's like an air conditioner in the background, and I'm trying to get my microphone to just pick up my voice without picking up the air conditioner. Like, how do I make this work? And at some point it's good to take a step back and realize like, well, hold on, the job of the microphone is to pick up sound, and I'm trying to make this microphone not pick up sound. Like, I'm actually like, it's not, what I'm trying to do is not actually possible within the world of the microphone. Like, I need some kind of digital signal processing or something to fix this problem. When people look at Congress and they see things aren't working, I think sometimes people are a little bit too quick to blame the institution or the bureaucracy. I think there are good arguments for expanding like the.
Do you think I'm blaming the institution itself?
Not necessarily, but like I think that right now the reason why we don't see legislation and stuff passed in Congress isn't because of the Congress. I think it's because the people in the United States are genuinely torn in half over what we want to do in this country. Like, if it was the case tomorrow that 80% of America wanted to do a particular thing, I think it would happen pretty quickly. Even though I don't know if a lot of people would agree with that. But I think the issue right now is that we're divided amongst our realities so much. Where half the country thinks that like solar panels are fake and lame or whatever, and so they don't want them and they want coal. And then the other half of the country, we're so divided that we can't expect our bureaucracies to kind of like pick up where the people are, because they're actually accurately representing where the people are, which is completely divided amongst themselves and unable to move forward in any coherent direction. Yeah.
And I would agree with that, but one thing I have read about was the fact that over the course of the past 60 years, we've had like our population balloon, yet the amount of representation we receive is the same as it's been since I think like the 40s, since World War II.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's good arguments for expanding the House. I think you can make a strong argument for that.
It seems like it's very divided, but in reality, you only have so many spots to fill up, and so the people that are the most desperate, which are the people who have the most money, are willing to put that many chips to gamble in, if that makes sense. They're willing to say, okay, I only have 4 seats in Congress here, so why not just buy out 4 candidates or spend money on their campaigns and make sure the ones that I want get in there, while a lot of us, like you or me, we don't have that money nor that kind of sway in the world. It's either money or power, and we have neither of it individually.
Yeah, I mean, I think expanding the House would be a good way to help alleviate some issues. The issue is that right now, like every single structure of government kind of favors conservatives. Yeah. So anytime you push for an expansion or change in any of these things, whether it's the Senate, the filibuster, the Electoral College, or the House, like conservatives are going to accuse you of being partisan. But I think expanding the House, would help to some extent. Yeah, it would. Their elections would be more costly, everything else. Yeah. So that would be a thing I'd be broadly in favor of. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. And then also I think if we want to get everybody, we have to go pretty quickly because I'm supposed to be going in like 8 minutes. So. Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it pretty quick.
Okay.
But in this very room right here, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, James Fishback was coming here, and he's running for Florida governor. I know you've debated him on Jubilee. So what are your thoughts and opinions about him?
On Fishback, I don't know. I think he's kind of unserious, but I think I'm debating him in like 2 or 3 days. So that'll be a fun. It'll be a conversation.
Okay, and that's gonna be on your stream, I'm guessing.
What?
That's gonna be on your stream.
Yeah, it'll be on my stream. Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be a conversation. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I was watching your debate with Vegan Gains. I know you had a few with them. I didn't want to watch a 3-hour full video because that's way too fucking long. But what was your ultimate argument against veganism? Because it's hard for me to come up with a good argument against it, if I'm being honest.
We listen. This is not a veganism debate forum. It's a lot. That's a lot. That's a big thing.
It's too much to explain the whole concept.
Basically, there. I mean, like my
Just
argument.
like a summary, quick
my
summary.
argument would be that there is no strong reason to believe that there is an analog between like a human conscious experience and an animal conscious experience, and that if you were to go down the road of trying to value an animal conscious experience, you'd be creating the most novel, like moral structure that has never existed in society before, where you're creating animals that have all of this kind of like moral agency granted to them, but none of them are
so
ever.
You can't verify the animal consciousness mainly.
To some extent, yeah. But also, whatever rule structure you would create, they would never follow, right? Like we're never gonna have a court for a cat that ate a mouse. Like you're not gonna hold it responsible for murder or anything.
See,
but, like,
when it gets these ridiculous arguments, I just don't get it, dude. Like,
what do you mean by ridiculous arguments?
Like cat and mouse, like you're talking about some hypothetical. It's like, bro.
It's not hypothetical. Cats are obligate carnivores. They eat mice. That's not
Dude,
hypothetical.
This is why
What
I
do you
can't
mean?
watch a 3-hour debate, dude. This is like, all right.
By the end of my
anyways.
3-hour debate with Vegan Gains, he was eating a big juicy steak. He was screaming the whole time. He was. You should have watched the end of it. See, you should have been prepared.
All right. Well, I think you're very entertaining, and I hope you have more debates with him in the future.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by saying that I think it's very important for us as a society, especially as young people, to have these conversations. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody that helped to facilitate this discussion tonight. With that said, considering the topic of tonight's discussion being that it's the progression and future of American politics, do you think you could see the persistence of the Democrat and Republican parties into the future, or do you think that we would see the emergence of new and different parties coming to light and fruition?
It's just too hard right now with the way that our first past the post system works to have to introduce a third party, I think. So, and for whatever reason, you can be mean or nice about it, the third parties that exist in this country seem to only care about the presidency. Maybe if third parties tried to make more of a splash on the local level or even like the state level, maybe you'd see something different. But like, you know, like I feel like they thaw out Jill Stein every 4 years to bring her around to talk about the presidency, and then libertarians will come out and argue about driver's license and toasters, you know, every 4 years for the presidency. But you don't see them make like big moves at the local or state level as much. So yeah, maybe if that were to happen, maybe you'd see more third parties emerge. But right now, I just think our type of voting style system doesn't really lend itself well to third parties. Yeah.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Man, you really raised this mic stand. You're really messing up. We're not all 6'2" Chads like you, okay? So, sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, so I just wanted to ask if you think that the success of James Fishback, like especially among Gen Z and the younger generation, like indicates that Groyper or Groyper-adjacent ideology will become a permanent or even more dominant faction amongst the Republican Party. Like some early polling shows that Fishback is unfortunately viewed very favorably among Gen Z.
I mean, like, I'm not to take away from anybody running for office. I'm not running for office. Well, I know I would take away, I guess, because I don't like this guy's politics. But, like, he's polling at, like, 5% of, like, the actual likely to vote people, right? I think you can argue that it might be worrying that Gen Z is voting a certain way. Like, this is a thing I've said for years, and I don't mean to be derogatory towards any of you guys, but like when you're young, you're radical. Like that's just always the case. Like there aren't 18-year-olds that are obsessed with a balanced budget and fiscal responsibility in the government and whatever. Like when you're young, you don't have the work experience, you don't have the life experience yet, and it's easy to just like have like very strong feelings about things that will become tempered over time. I think that's like completely and totally normal. It's to be expected. I just think it's for some reason for a lot of adults, when you pop out a kid, you just completely forget everything about being a kid. And yeah, I know that sounds really derogatory or dismissive of young people's political views, but like young people will always have radical beliefs and ideas. That's just the nature of being a young person. So I'm not super worried about it. Like obviously it's disappointing to see so many people that are, you know, trending in the anti-Semitic or weird neo-Nazi direction, or like I guess I don't know if we're going to be debating whether women should have the right to vote or like stuff like this again. Like obviously this is kind of disappointing, but like I mean for Gen Z, like if like a lot of these people don't vote anyway, like younger people just tend to not be as politically engaged. So yeah, I don't know. It's always good stuff to look at and kind of look at the trajectory of and to address, but it's not like existential crises, you know. If it was an existential crisis, then Republicans would have been vindicated when they've been telling us for 30 years that Congress was going to become all communists or whatever, because that's what the schools were like. Like it's just not a thing that really happens yet as much. Cool.
Thank you. That was a reasonable response.
Thanks.
What's up, man? Love your stuff.
Hi.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, but you know Steve Bannon and also it's like several members of Congress have said things, kind of saying that that there's definitely going to be ICE agents at the polls during the midterms. So I just wanted to say that as context for this question. So what do you think is the limit, if any, to what the administration is willing to do to influence the midterm elections? And what probability do you assign to these actions deciding the course of the elections?
I mean, I think they'll do whatever they can. Now, thankfully, they're pretty incompetent, so that's probably not going to be much, but I think they will do whatever they can to try to mess with the elections. The SAVE Act is one of those things they're trying to do, which I think it doesn't look like they're going to be successful on, is my current understanding. ICE agents at polling places to harass people might be another thing they try to do. I don't know how widespread that can be. Getting these voter rolls and registries from states as they send the FBI in, and Tulsi Gabbard, I guess, to go and retrieve voter rolls, like might be the way they try to purge voter rolls or something. But yeah, I think they'll try to do whatever they can. I think it's the thing we should all be really worried about and vigilant about, but hopefully they don't have much success there. Yeah.
What kind of probability do you assign to it affecting the outcome of the election?
I don't know, 6 or 7%.
6 or 7% or 60 or 70?
6 or 7%. I don't know. I would say it's still like a low percentage, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, how's it going, Destiny?
Pretty good.
Shout out to your secret Israeli boyfriend. He's a viewer of yours who you took a picture with at one point and it trended as like y'all were supposedly dating or something. It was funny.
Well, it's not a secret anymore, I guess. So thanks a lot. Okay.
Yeah, but like anyway, at his request, like I came to this whole thing. I don't actually watch your content that much, but I do kind of see the impact based on how people talk about you, and I see that you position yourself as like a very like logical, informed political commentator. No, you're like the results guy. You care about that sort of stuff. Hopefully. And I figured like maybe we should like apply that kind of framework to yourself. So I know that in the past, you were actually like a very, very impressive StarCraft player. You got like 4th place at MLG Global in 2012, which like I played StarCraft before. That shit's kind of insane. So mad respect to you. However, if we also look at your political career, your canvassing for Sherrod Brown had pretty much 0 results. Your coverage of the Donald Trump assassination attempt, as well as the Charlie Kirk assassination, just like it was a PR disaster for all intents and purposes that galvanized the right and gave it a lot of ammunition. Multiple of your political opponents, from like Vosh to Hassan, they say that you're a net negative to leftist political discourse online, and lots of smaller creators would agree with them. And on top of that, in March 2022, you were banned for harassing people who are on your side of the political aisle, which is the middle of election season. So if we apply this like results framework to yourself, wouldn't it be more logical for you to go back to playing StarCraft, which you were genuinely like really skilled at?
Well, listen, I think the fact that so many people have such strong opinions about me means I must be doing something right. That's my perspective on it. It's not surprising to me that people that are political opposites of me would think I'm a net negative to their movement, considering we have completely and totally different ideological views.
But they're all like generally center left.
Yeah, Hassan Piker is center left, and
I mean,
people like Emma Vigeland, these are center left. What are the center left people that have huge disagreements with me? Can you name one?
I would say Vosh is like center
You
left.
think Vosh is center left?
But like
Vosh is center
he's
left?
center left. I mean, I'm a Stalinist, so I'm like really far. All of these guys are center left.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you should stick to StarCraft. Okay.
Damn.
Thanks for the questions.
Peace.
How much? I'll go for as long as you want, but I don't. Do you want to? Can we? Okay. Yeah. Sweet, yeah. Go for it. Okay. What do you got? Hey, what's up?
So, my question is, there's clearly a lot of corruption in our government and our country. At what point would you think that political like revolution would be possible, if it even is possible in a country at this scale? Like, what would be the straw that breaks the camel's back? You know, after everything we've seen in the past couple of years.
I mean, corruption is a hard thing to talk about. It sounds silly, but I don't really think there's that much corruption in the government when you compare it to like a failed state. Like, we definitely have huge issues at the top right now, and we're going to run into big issues because they've gutted out kind of a lot of our institutional knowledge. But like, we're not at the stage yet where, like you can bribe, like the mayor to do some crazy stuff. Like, I don't know. We just like, in general, like society is still functioning pretty well. Like the United States is still on top of the world in most regards. Like you can go to school, your utilities still work. Like traffic is flowing. Like I think sometimes we over exaggerate how corrupted and lost and destroyed the country is. Like for the most part, things are still kind of functioning. Yeah. I know it's kind of unsatisfactory, but like there is a world where things could be so messed up that we have to start over or have some huge revolution. I just don't think we're quite at that point yet. I don't think we're even close to that point yet. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm wondering what you think there is to be done, if anything, about the role that money and the semi-structured, semi-extant private lobby groups, like, for lack of a better word, like Big Pharma, the MIC, play in American politics, and if there are any groups that you think are particularly caustic to American politics.
I feel like a lot of these issues I think are magnified or made significantly worse by the lack of kind of a real journalist class in the United States right now. Like we can argue about the pernicious effects of money, especially in places where the American mind doesn't exist much because the issues are just too complicated. You can arguably have like some really bad influence from lobbyists there. But the issue is we should have journalists that are able to spotlight this, call it out, bring politicians on, ask them tough questions, and that should serve as some kind of limiter to that thing, but right now we just don't have that at all. So any conversations that we have about lobbying or stuff related to lobbying are kind of impossible because politicians, especially on the right, are just incentivized to be nice to their lobbyists and mean to the enemy lobbyists, I think, yeah. So I would kind of look to like the journalist class to ideally help us curb a lot of that influence. And then I think there are real conversations we can have about Citizens United related stuff and, you know, should we have C4s that can take infinite political money to throw at candidates? And I think that like if you can make that journalist protected title, I do think there should be like a full disclosure on income sources for people because it is interesting sometimes to see where people are getting their money from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this should be a quick question. So I saw that you made the argument that Republicans are very good at creating a heavily biased parallel media environment, but I have also seen the Republican counter-argument that the previously existent mainstream media environment, what with the New York Times and I don't know what television channels they'd cite, MSNBC maybe, are in fact a similarly heavily biased liberal media environment, and that Republicans were merely creating a counterweight. I do not agree with this argument, but just for the sake of devil's advocacy, what's your refutation?
I mean, like, we go to the world of fact and prediction and we see who was right and who was wrong. People don't like to do it, but people should be forced to make predictions about the political environment and to see how things will turn out, to see if they're, I guess, their instincts or their intuitions about what each side is trying to do actually comes true. To ground this in an example, one of the funniest and most pathetic things I saw was, I think it was Brett Weinstein and Joe Rogan were on a podcast, and Trump had just won the election, this most recent one, and Trump was like, oh my God, like, thank God Trump won the election. Like, can you imagine what would have happened if Kamala won? And they were both like, yeah, for sure, it'd be crazy. And I was like, what do you mean? They were, Kamala and Biden were just president for 4 years. Nothing happened to you guys. What the fuck are you talking about, you know? Like, if you look at the predictions that conservatives made, it was predicted over and over and over again that like, if we look at COVID, it was predicted that there would be 1 billion vaccines that were mandatory for everybody, that mask mandates would last forever, that there would be vaccine passports for every single country, that the government would do permanent lockdowns on a rotating basis to shut down churches, that every single country on the planet would start collaborating with ways to freeze travel. Like, none of these things came true. None of these things happened, ever. Meanwhile, if you look at the Democrat side, when people were trying to sound the alarms on Project 2025, Republicans played stupid, and then now that Trump's in office, what have they gotten, like half or more of that agenda, that entire agenda passed? Like, if you can make all these predictions about Democrats, but when you look at the conservatives and you ask them, look at what they predict the Democrats would do in power, right? I was promised mandatory kitty litter boxes in every high school for furry students or whatever. Like, none of this stuff even happened. Like, none of this was real. Like, the Joe Rogan story, that was just fake. And then meanwhile, you know, Republicans will look at Democrats and like, what are you guys so worried about? Oh, you know, like Kamala's going to lead us to World War III. And then like day one, it's like, it's the Department of War guys, like, we're gearing up to fight literally fucking everybody. And I was like, well, what happened there? And then you see their stories change over and over and over and over and over again on every single thing. So that would be my test for it. Like, obviously nobody wants to argue that, and they get very uncomfortable, and they always use these stupid phrases like, oh no, we get lost in the weeds, or there's nuance in this. It's like, no, your predictions about what the Democrats would do in power were all wrong. I like, even for lawyers I argue this with, you know, I was talking to this one guy, and I'm like, what is your biggest fear under the Democrats versus like the Republicans? He's like, well, I think they're going to expand, you know, things like DEI and affirmative action, and it's going to be horrible for my kids in the future. And it's like, under Biden, the Supreme Court got rid of affirmative action. What are you afraid of? He's like, well, okay, I guess. So it's like, what are we even talking about? You know, that's what I would do. Go back, look at their predictions, ask them if any of them came true. The answer is no, none of them came true. They'll always have an excuse for why they didn't come true, because like the Republicans stopped them or some bullshit or whatever. But yeah, that's what I would say. That's how I would challenge it.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
how can you have like a serious political debate with like the current Republican Party when a big chunk of the base and the cabinet officials don't believe in the results of the 2020 election? And like, when's the video coming?
I didn't hear the last part of your question. For the first question, that's on the journalist class. Like you should know that if you're a Republican, you're stepping into the Thunderdome every time you go onto a mainstream media channel. Like that, you're going to get asked tough questions because you can't tell outrageous lies about every single thing that you're, being asked questions on. But it's up to journalists to hold the politicians accountable for that. Yeah.
Is it okay for people to just not care about like whether they say they don't believe the results? Like, for example, in the 2020.
No, I think that's ridiculous. That's just like push them on it. Like, what is the evidence for? They have no evidence for any of this. Like, it's ridiculous. That's an unacceptable position to hold, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, what's up?
Yo, what's up? Oh, can I answer?
Yeah, see, he did it. Don't worry, you're good.
Can you guys hear me? Hello. Hi.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you.
I'll try to make this quick.
Yeah,
'cause
quick
I
one,
know
go.
We're in a rush. Okay, so whenever I argue politics with people in my life, one thing I always hear from them is that Republicans are the party of caring about their family values, children, family first, basically, and that's why they will always vote red. I don't understand why this is. When they're the party of separating families, they hate public schools, they hate free lunches, they hate SNAP benefits for struggling families, and when these things get taken away, they celebrate it. And then they also support Trump, who stands against all family values. He multiple wives, cheats on his wife with a porn star when his wife just gave birth 4 months before. And he's the Epstein guy, the grab him by the pussy guy, civilly liable for sexual assault. I don't understand why this is like the brand that they have. How can we take this and make the Democratic Party take back like the brand of the family party?
Yeah, again, this is boring. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to go back to the journalist class. It's got to be journalists that push on these things. Like, I ask questions to these people, and it's like it's unfathomable. Like, there are just so many things that the Republican Party just gets away with saying is true. If you watch my debate with Tom Bilyeu, I hit on a few of these where it's like, oh, you think that the deficit and controlling the debt is the most important thing. Okay, I can be with you there. So you're going to vote for a Democrat, right? Because how could you ever justify voting for a Republican when Bush got us into 2 massive wars and Trump 1 did crazy deficit spending even before COVID hit with a giant tax cut with no spending cuts, right? Like, what Bill Clinton was the last person to balance the budget. He was a Democrat. The net job creation by conservatives over the past 30 years, I think, might be 0. Like how could you possibly look at these guys? Trump alone is responsible for a quarter so far of like our current U.S. debt. How could you possibly vote for these guys? But it's just like given as true. Like, they're just like, oh, well, Democrats spend more and conservatives are more responsible about balancing the budget. Like, that's just a thing that's said and nobody challenges it. I think if people hear people challenge it more, people will stop accepting it as true. But it's up to the journalists that are asking questions to do that. It can't be that you can just go on TV and lie with impunity over and over and over again. If you're allowed to do it, then people are going to believe it.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, like, people, they don't care about anything that you just said, but for some reason, they will always have this aura of the family thing. Like, if I saw an ad and it was like a dude, a dad going home in his truck, and then his daughter runs at him, and then his pregnant wife is at the door, like, I'm immediately gonna think this is like a conservative slop ad.
You just
like,
yeah, I know, I
girls.
understand. It's just conservative. You just have to fight on the points. Like you have to bring up that why are you even seen that way, right? It was the child tax credit expansion by Biden that the Republicans got rid of. That was a massive boon to people that needed money for their families. Funding in public schools and everything are incredibly important for child education, and Republicans are constantly fighting against this stuff. It's just Republicans are, when it comes to like what does it mean to be a true American? Why is it that we always look at rural America for that? Not to hate on rural America, but like city slickers are seen as like these alien weird things, but rural America is real. Why? Why is rural America any more real than city America? I don't know. It's just a thing that's like given as a truism that nobody ever pushes back on. But if more people push back on it, less people would have the perception of it. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you.
All right, 2 more. We got it. Hey, what's up?
Hi. I wanted to ask you the question. Where does freedom come from? What does it mean to you?
Man, where does freedom come from? I mean, I guess to some extent I believe in the negative existence of freedom, such that born into a vacuum, a human being is kind of sort of free to do whatever. But then on the flip side of that, like, I believe in the positive version of freedom that if not provided with some things, humans can never truly explore their freedom, I guess. Encapsulated in a quote, one of the things I like about the United States is I've heard it said that America is the best country on the planet because it allows you to become the greatest version of yourself, which implies some default freedom that people have, plus some providing for ability to pursue things to be the best versions of themselves. But yeah, that's a very broad answer, but kind of a broad question, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. final question. Hi, what's up?
As you know, the House Oversight Committee just subpoenaed Pam Bondi over a potential cover-up regarding the Epstein files. Do you think, well, as we saw that Trump fired Kristi Gnome of the DHS, do you think that Trump would fire Pam Bondi over this?
I feel like Pam Bondi is too good of an attack dog for Trump and too capable. I don't feel like she would be fired. Kristi Gnome was genuinely a total dipshit. Pam Bondi is pretty sharp. I don't think that he would get rid of Pam Bondi, but that's just a vibe feeling I have. But I don't know. I look at people. I don't know, man. This cabinet's crazy. Like Kash Patel is still there, so I don't know. Can I fathom them getting rid of Pam Bondi? I don't know. But I don't know how you would make any prediction in terms of like who would go. It's hard to say. But yeah, my feeling. Well, actually, I guess you could just see what Trump is saying about them. If Trump starts saying mean things about them, they might be on the way out. But yeah, that'd be my feeling is she's probably not going anywhere. You know?
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for Destiny. Thank you all so much for tuning in. That's all we have for you guys tonight. Thank you for everyone tuning in online as well. We hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. One more time again for Destiny.
Thank you for coming.